with Representative Seth Grove from York County, and you've been a huge transparency advocate over the years. So can you just tell us a little bit about some of the recent works that you've been doing?
Yeah, I probably started on the financial end. Pennsylvania is not well known for being a well-managed state within its finances. Repeated deficits, expenditures over revenues, moving money into accounts offline, trying to show lower spending than what we're actually doing. So the fourth way is trying to bring some honesty and some transparency in our finances. So not only the members of the General Assembly, but the general public have an honest assessment of what's happening with the finances, because that causes a multitude of problems. So if you want to start a new program, you need to fund it. To operate current programs, you need to be able to fund it. So if you don't have money to do those things, to do the public good, you create a lot of problems. And then, every year of saying we need tax increases, whether you support it or not, if it's always on the table, you're not really fixing anything moving forward. And then we kind of hit the pandemic. And the realization of right to, so when you're a public official, you see the right to knows, and you're just coming in, you're like, more right to knows. Like, we generally, like our right to know officers, we generally don't, like, they take care of it, so we don't have that day-to-day interaction. But even within the Wolf administration, members have had to do RTKs with the governor's office for stuff, and we can debate whether members of the General Assembly, through constitutional powers of oversight, need to do RTKs, but the realization of how difficult it was for us to get information, and we have constitutional authority. How does the general public get information that they want to see? So then the pandemic hit, and the right to know offices were shuttered. We had all this information coming out, but we weren't getting a lot of what we needed. How are you making your decisions? Why are you making your decisions? What modeling are you using? And it was kind of a stonewall effect. And we were impacted. And the general public, a lot of people were tracking, because still today, people are still tracking all the data coming in. And they weren't getting a lot. And then they were seeing weird trends happening. So, working to reopen the right to know offices, making sure that there's a mechanism in place to make sure they're not shuttered again. There's some reasonable expectations, right? If Harrisburg is flooded, we're not sending agency heads by boat to go get that, right? There has to be reasonable expectations, but, no one's working in the offices. Everybody's at home. Coming into the office to get a document, and a lot of stuff's now online, particularly if the administration is looking at stuff. Everybody's at home, and their data's back and forth. They're creating documents of data that they could be releasing. So we thought it was, one, important to ensure that they were open, and they were open in a way that obviously maintained safety of the employees, but are still responsive to the general public. And two, we've seen superpowers by the executive branch all over the country. During those times, I think there should be super oversight. They should be even more transparent and more accountable. So we put in there provisions that you have to share the data you're modeling, how you're collecting the data, to make sure that people have that access, and they can actually see, okay, you're making this decision, here's the data that we base it on, and then they can make up their own mind whether that was good or that was bad. So that was done in a lot of hard work. The governor didn't want to do it for the most part, but through a lot of public pressure by your organization and a lot of organizations out there, we were able to get him to at least not veto it. We have that, and then obviously we still have some underlying issues with the Disease Control Protection Act within this that we need to clarify moving forward. So it's really eye-opening, I think, to members of the General Assembly, members of the public, of how important transparency is in government. People should have a right to know what's happening. They should have a right to know, to get documents. They should have an understanding of how policy is made. So it's a critical tool, and we've had it. It's been out there for a decade. or so.
The latest version.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, maybe going back next year and seeing what has worked, what hasn't worked. And I know there's issues. There's cost to local governments, and when kind of for-profit businesses are trying to get contract documents to try to make money and do that stuff. That's tough, but it should be easy for citizens to access. I usually tell local governments, like, you put online, you don't have to worry about right to know, because you just say, we already have it online. So the more transparent they are, the less the need they have to do actual right to know requests. So it's been a good thing.
Well, on behalf of the members of PNA and the public, we truly thank you for all your work on Act 77, as well as all the things that you've been doing on transparency and the disease prevention and control law, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Next question, why do you believe, and you talked about this a little bit, but why do you believe that transparency and the media are so critical today? So
someone needs to check and balance, and it's kind of funny because there's like this love-hate relationship between the news and legislators, right? Some legislators believe that every news story should be glossy. Like, it's not the role of the news media to just go back and kind of say, oh, they're so wonderful, they're doing a great job. It's about accountability and openness and transparency. I think probably the big problem with that has come to the 24/7 news media cycle. So it's not really your print news, it's your big stations who have moved away from reporting the facts and letting the viewers or the readers decide on the merits of it, to everything's opinionated and you get 5-second talking points, and there's not a kind of an in-depth discussion of policy today. So your newspapers are kind of like the last bastions of reporting facts and getting it out there, and it's a two-way street. Like, the job is accountability. They're there to ask the tough questions and try to dig and get the answers, and without that, you're left with government run amok, because who's really the checks and balances? Obviously, with the Constitution, you have checks and balances between branches, but if they're singularly moving in a direction, you lose that. So it's important to have it. It's important to have those constitutional rights for a free and fair press, and it's important for them to ask the tough questions and expect some kind of answer from government officials. So it's if you're expecting to be loved and have more kids, like when you're elected official, you get thick skin and expect tough questions. And we got all the easy answers. I tell my dad all the time, your generation took all the easy answers. We're left with very difficult decisions, and you got to understand them and be able to explain them to the general public on numerous issues, from education to environment to tax policy. So, but it's you need to do it, and you're always going to have that little bit of friction, but that's okay, because that's part of the system. And ask a question, give the best honest answer you can, and it is what it is.
Well, thank you, Representative Grove. We really appreciate all your work.
Thank you. We appreciate what you do on a day-to-day basis, and it's not easy, and we understand the finances of print media today and everything. So it's not an easy industry to be involved in, but it is a crucial one, and it's one that's enshrined in our Constitution. So we appreciate it.
Thank you.